Well, how are you?
Oh, pretty good. I didn't come up here with an argument, just a question on clarification.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of your speech, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you said something about different groups, such as Black Lives Matter groups, gay, lesbian groups, Latino groups, that were demanding privileges, that they're demanding...
No, I'm saying there's a hierarchy of victimhood that exists in the philosophy of what they call intersectionality that suggests that American society discriminates against each of these groups, and therefore the government must make up the difference. No, I said that they claim that there is such a thing as white privilege. Mm-hmm. And I said that there's such a thing as victim privilege, which allows you to basically say shut up and also engage in violence. That was the exact phrase.
From your perspective, what would you say that these groups are fighting for? What do you say their motivation is?
I think that, like all interest groups, their interest is in large part in self-perpetuation. I think that in a lot of politics, there's an interest in self-perpetuation. And this is true for virtually all interest groups. It's true for Jewish interest groups, it's true for black interest groups, it's true for all interest groups are in the business of saying to people, we have victimhood status, we need your money to help fight it. And that's, and that may be true to a more or lesser extent, but the idea that across the United States, all black people are being discriminated against, and that's the cause of the wealth gap between black and white in the United States. Or that gay people across the United States are victims of this terrible straight privilege that exists across the United States and that's manifest in broad-based discrimination against gay folks. You actually have to show evidence of that. If you show evidence of that, I'm happy to acknowledge that it exists, and more than that, I would prefer individual evidence that we can all do something about it as opposed to just saying it's out there somewhere.
Okay. You've been saying a lot about how like all these people are claiming that they're victims.
Mm-hmm.
For you, as a white male, have you ever tried putting yourself in these people's shoes? Have you ever tried to look from their standpoint?
Sure. I mean, but I don't know what that means because every individual has a different standpoint. Colin Powell's kid is not the fellow who just spoke. This idea that the idea that I don't know, when we say put yourself in somebody else's shoes, there's actually a fascinating study about this. It says empathy is bad politics. Sympathy is good politics, empathy is bad politics.
Hold on. What I mean is, have you ever looked at the world through their eyes? Do you know what it's like to be gay or black or to be discriminated?
Okay, so as far as discrimination, I don't claim victimhood status, even though I was the #1 target of anti-Semitism on the internet last year. Okay, I'm not discriminated against in the United States. Okay, I'm very free here. I do really well. As far as the idea that the best way to do politics, or the best way to make public policy, or the best way to discuss politics in public is to walk in someone else's shoes, see through somebody else's eyes. That's true at a very rudimentary level. You try to understand somebody's problems. But the idea that that is the basis for public policy, in law, they say, there's a phrase in law, it's called hard cases make bad law. Right? The idea is that if you have too much sympathy for the person who's in front of you, you end up making bad overall decisions. And there have been studies on this about empathy in politics. Empathy actually leads to bad policy because while you're empathizing for the person whose shoes you're standing in, you're forgetting about the effects of the public policy you're recommending on the other million people the public policy actually impacts. And so, if the implication is that my perspective is coming from a lack of empathy or a lack of sympathy, I utterly disagree. I think that my perspective is coming from the ultimate sympathy, which is I want to see people succeed in the society. And the way to make people fail in the society is by inculcating in them from the time they're 5 that they are destined to fail in a society that discriminates against them.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Shapiro.
Howdy.
Hi. So what is your formal education background? So I guess a lot of people don't know what your undergraduate degree was in. So you don't have, you wouldn't consider yourself an expert in sociology?
I mean, I don't consider sociology a particularly expert field, but go ahead. I think I'm able to read a sociologist.
It is a field of study, but so you're not necessarily an expert.
Yes, there are lots of fields of study.
Right. Well, what I'm getting at is there's a lot of topics.
So I know a lot less about welding than I do about sociology.
What I'm getting at is that you're not considered an expert in sociology, psychology, gender studies, lesbian dance theory, any of these things that you've brought up tonight.
I know a lot more about all those others than lesbian dance theory. As far as, if you want to take issue with the argument, I would urge you not to use the argument from authority, which is somebody has a PhD by their name, they know what they're talking about.
Right. No, I'm
That's
just
a dumb
saying
argument.
that, what I'm trying to get at is that the fact that Do you have any other further education in any of these topics or any of these fields of study?
I don't need a 7-year degree in sociology. No bullshit when I hear it. Right. Yeah, giving it.
Right. That would mean that you're also offering kind of an unqualified opinion on a lot of these topics.
See, again, you're just making the argument from authority. I don't think slapping a PhD from Ferris State next to your name makes you an expert in all things in the field in which you propose to speak. Okay, the fact is that either my argument's good or my argument's bad. Citing to my credentials is a really bad way of making an argument. It's like it's actually the equivalent of, it's so funny, when people do this, it's the equivalent of actually a religious person saying, citing to the Bible for an argument. I'm a very religious person, right? I mean, see this? It's the yarmulke. I'm a religious person. Okay, I never cite to the Bible. The reason I don't cite to the Bible is because that's an argument from authority. Okay, you may not believe the authority to which I'm citing. I don't believe the authority to which you're citing. So you're going to have to make me an argument as to what I'm saying that's wrong instead of just saying I don't have the properly enumerated degree from the institution of your choice.
I'm merely citing academia. If you haven't done any significant study or any type of educational, you haven't established yourself as a PhD or doctor in any of these programs, so how can you make a qualified opinion on any of these topics is my question.
Because I have read the studies and I can have an opinion on them.
And that's your opinion and mine was just stated. So, thank you.
Yes, that was my opinion.
Hi. My name's Emma. I'm an RA here. And you said safe place was weird to you?
The phrase safe spaces is weird to me because if you want to say that it's a comfortable space, that seems to me a better phrase. Safe space is a dumb phrase because it implies that if you walk out the front door of your RA building, somebody's going to beat the hell out of you.
That's not what it means exactly. There's a lot of people on campus that have been, do jokes about rape, and that actually does happen here. I don't know,
No, I joked about the idea that every woman on campus is going to be raped. I would never joke about rape itself. As I said, people who rape should be castrated or killed.
Right. Well, the way it works here is if you're raped and you don't have someone to talk to, you can come to your RA, and I personally dealt with those situations, and we have programs in progress.
Good.
So being an RA is not a weird space. So
No, I'm not. Listen, my wife was an RA. I'm fine with the idea of RAs. All I'm saying is that the concept of the safe space, when applied ideologically, as it has been across campuses, ends up actually being an ideological cleansing facility. That's a different thing. If you just want to say come in here because it's going to be a place where you can talk about what happened to you without having to worry about people judging you,
right.
It seems to me that. What was that?
Why is that a bad thing?
That's not a bad thing. I was about to say it wasn't, if you let me finish the sentence. In fact, I would hope that they have a safe space at the police department where you can report the person who raped you so that we can put them in jail and then castrate or kill them.
Hey Ben, I'm Jacob. I'm a huge fan of yours, but I'm also a huge fan of Milo's. Your guys' message.
I like how you raise your eyebrows.
Ooh, you do that too, right? Your guys' message is the exact same thing, and you pull the same crowd. Why do you guys hate each other?
So I don't hate Milo. I think Milo is a provocateur who participates and he caters to a fringe to which I would never cater. And let me give you a few examples. And since I knew I was going to get this question, I took a few notes, because I don't want to slander Milo the way that he actually slanders other people. So, here are a few notes. Milo says Jews run the media. Earlier this month, he characterized a Jewish BuzzFeed writer as a, quote, typical example of a sort of thick-as-pig-shit media Jew. He justifies anti-Semitic memes as playful trollery. He pats racist sites like American Renaissance on the head. He describes himself as a chronicler of, an occasional fellow traveler with the alt-right, while writing pieces, recognizing that their quote-unquote dangerously bright intellectuals believe culture is inseparable from race, which, in case you don't understand what that means, that is racism. Back in his days going under the name of Milo Wagner, he purportedly posed with his hand atop a Hitler biography, posted a Hitler meme about killing 6 million Jews, and wore an Iron Cross. Just last week, he berated a Muslim woman in his audience at one of his speeches for wearing a hijab in the United States, and I am the personal recipient of Milo's tender affections on Twitter, where Milo used to sick his followers on me. As I mentioned, I received about 7,500 openly anti-Semitic tweets in the last election cycle. Now, a lot of those were from Milo followers when Milo was kicked off Twitter, which, by the way, I opposed. I didn't think Milo should be kicked off Twitter. When Milo was kicked off Twitter, that amount in my feed dropped by about 70%. On the day of my child's birth, Milo wanted to demonstrate to everybody that I was a so-called cuck. Okay, if you don't know what a cuck is, folks, a cuck is an alt-right term of art that is used to talk about people who didn't sufficiently support Donald Trump because the idea is that Donald Trump stands up for white people, and if you didn't vote for Donald Trump, you wanted to watch your wife have sex with a black man. So on the day of my child's birth, Milo tweeted a picture of me of a black child, right? Because I'm a cuck. So that's why I don't like Milo.
Is that kind of a victim stance, though? You're the kind of guy that always likes to fight this kind of stuff.
I'm not a victim of Milo, I just think he's an asshole.
That's why I listen to him.
By the way, I'll note, I just spent like 5 minutes in the speech talking about how Milo shouldn't have been rioted against at Berkeley, and I oppose Milo's ban on Twitter, and I oppose everybody who's trying to shut down Milo. I think the best way to defeat Milo is either to ignore him. Folks on the left, advice for you on Milo. The only thing Milo cares about is attention. If you ignore him, he'll go away. And that's number one. Number two, the other thing that you can do with Milo is you can actually go to one of his lectures and ask him a tough question, as long as he's not doing the darling routine.
Hi, Ben. I'm Tim. I am from Grand Valley, and I had dinner with you this fall. I want to thank you first because my professor asked how I want to be identified, and I did answer with Your Holiness. So I got Your Holiness in that class.
That's excellent.
And also, I sued my university for putting up safe spaces, and we're going to win that case. So thank you for your help. Tyson from ADF and my guys.
Okay,
so, yeah.
I'm a lawyer.
Yeah, we're talking slang. No, I'm also a Boy Scout camp director. And I want your opinion on their new statement that transgender boys or anyone who identifies
As a boy is now allowed to do whatever Scouts.
Yeah, how can I still work with my beliefs in an organization that has turned for me? I love the camp, I love what I do, like,
Yeah.
I just need guidance.
I don't know the answer to that. It depends on what the hierarchy says or whether you even have to deal with the situation, because transgenderism is extraordinarily rare. I mean, just statistically speaking, it's not a commonplace thing. I think it's idiotic that the Boy Scouts have decided to become the whatever Scouts on the basis of prevailing social norms about how men can magically become women and women can magically become men. Boys cannot magically become girls, girls cannot magically become boys, and it's not unreasonable for the Boy Scouts to say we don't want to have girls in our troop, or for the Girl Scouts to say we don't want to have boys in our troop, and that's not based on self-identity, that's based on biology. There's nothing wrong with that. It's asinine that the Boy Scouts did that. The Boy Scouts have been caving for a few years to kind of leftist social pressure because they're afraid the government's going to crack down on them and take away nonprofit status and take away some of the government benefits they get. But yeah, I mean, as far as how you operate inside the organization, you know more about the organization than I do, so I'd have to have more details. But it's very rough. I mean, I think they're going to lose a lot of people over this sort of thing because, again, the motto, the whole oath that you take as a Boy Scout is about morality and about acting morally straight and about all this kind of stuff. And it seems like when they move toward the leftist social agenda in order to please people, they're destroying the base on which they stand.
Do I stay there, or should I leave somewhere else?
Well, I mean, as I say, it depends how well you can function in the situation you're in. I mean, if you're helping a lot of kids there, and you can do so without having come in conflict with this policy, maybe you stay, or maybe you found an alternative group where this isn't an issue, or parents don't have to worry that their beliefs about the biology of sex are going to be assaulted by the organization in which their kids take place.
Thank you, Ben. Good to see you again.
You too.
Hey Ben, I have 2 questions for you now because that just kind of sparked something in me.
Sure.
So, how do you say that some people don't have privilege when you basically just said that trans people aren't valid? They're not a thing. They're just girls pretending to be boys or boys pretending to be girls.
Okay.
Like, okay, I
That's
know
always exciting.
that
Okay.
sex is biological, but gender is a completely different thing. It's
No,
just
gender is not disconnected from sex. So.
It's not completely disconnected, but it's still a cultural thing. It's still from society. It's still
Okay.
in the mind.
No, it is not in the mind. Okay, you're not a man if you think you're a man. And I didn't say pretending, or if I did, I shouldn't have said pretending. Let me
You
amend.
said playing.
Okay, I said a boy who thinks he's a girl. That's the usual phraseology I use. Not playing. I usually say a boy who thinks he's a girl or a girl who thinks he's a boy, which is technically what we're talking about here. As far as the actual psychological issues at play, it used to be called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder. Now they call it gender dysphoria. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true. Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue that I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no. My answer is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should like not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place? They can't just like...
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Where's that written though? That
In the
you have to
name
biologically
Boy
be a boy?
Scouts.
They don't really specify, but just because a name says something.
Because for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did not mean girl.
2017 though, like, people are learning more things. There's cultures that have
And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine yes, that's right. Men and women are a completely different thing. This is true. Have you ever met a man or a woman?
But
They're
moose
completely
is a
different.
completely different thing. You can't just say you're a cat. It's not a thing. It's genders. It's not saying you're
Okay,
a
why is that? I don't understand. Why? Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are. Okay, because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably young and naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60?
Because it's...
Why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
Because it's not the same as gender. You can't just...
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change your gender. You can't magically change your sex. You can't magically change your age.
You can still legally change it. People recognize
You can't legally change your age, by the way.
Obviously. You can change your name, you can change your sex, you can change your identity.
Just because you can do things legally doesn't mean that they are correct biologically. You could do lots of things in the past that were incorrect biologically and correct legally. For a long period of time in the United States, sterilization of the mentally ill took place. That didn't make it okay. Skinner versus Oklahoma. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the decision.
Right. I still just don't understand why you open-minded and accepting of these children that have gender.
It's not a matter of open-minded and accepting. I want them to get treatment that they see fit. That's not involving me. The idea behind the transgender movement as a civil rights movement is the idea that all of their problems would just go away if I would pretend that they were the sex to which they claim membership. That's nonsense. The transgender suicide rate is 40%. It is 40%. And
Do you know why that is, though?
According to the Anderson School at UCLA, it makes no difference. The study came out last year. It makes no difference as a transgender person or not, which suggests there's a very high comorbidity between transgenderism, whatever that mental state may be, and suicidality. That has nothing to do with how society treats
Do you think it could be because of they're bullied at school?
No, I don't think that. I do not think that the discrepancy. I do not think the discrepancy. First of all, I'm against bullying of any sort. Okay, the idea that somebody would beat somebody up is terrible. Okay, as somebody who's viciously bullied in high school, I'm not a fan of bullying. But the idea that the normal suicide rate across the United States is 4%. The suicide rate in the transgender community is 40%. The idea that 36% more transgender people are committing suicide because people are mean to them is ridiculous. It's not true, and it's not backed by any science that anyone can cite. It is pure conjecture. In fact, it's not even true that bullying causes suicide, according to a lot of studies. For example, in the black community, where the idea is supposedly that America is a racist society, blacks are bullied a lot. Okay, in the black community has significantly lower suicide rates than in the white community. In fact, in third world countries, the suicide rate is significantly lower than in first world countries. Suicide actually seems to be a privilege of the upper classes, if you actually look at it from a financial perspective. So the idea that suicidality is directly a result of people like me saying, no, men are not women and women are not men, it's not true. It's also...
So you think it doesn't impact their identity at all, or their depression, or how they feel about themselves?
I think the idea that you're going to sacrifice the entire society's proper definition of sex because you think that there is in legal terms, somebody with an eggshell skull, meaning that somebody who has a pre-existing condition that makes them more susceptible to criticism, that is not a way to run a society. You can't sacrifice truth because some people are going to actually suffer because of the truth. Plus, there's no evidence whatsoever that the suicide rate would go down in the transgender community in any marked way if people just started pretending that men were women and women were men. We're trying that experiment now. We'll find out whether it works. So far, no evidence.
Have you talked to a group of trans people at all instead of this group of, like, white people?
I'm more...
Okay, last question about your Planned Parenthood thing. So why do you think it's not about controlling women's bodies and just about the separate life? Like, after the baby is born, how come more people don't care about them? They don't care where they end up in foster care, they don't care about the mother being poor, like...
Okay, I do care about the mother being poor, I do care about foster care.
Okay, but why don't you advocate for that, though? Because Planned Parenthood is supposed to prevent abortions.
Because, Planned Parenthood doesn't prevent abortions. They perform hundreds of thousands of abortions a year. They perform 300,000 abortions a year. The leading abortion bill in the United States.
Evidence for that, though?
That they perform 300,000 abortions a year? From Planned Parenthood. That's my evidence. They don't dispute that. No one
They
disputes
do
that.
like birth control and cancer.
I'm not anti-birth control.
I know.
Birth control is extraordinarily cheap.
That provides affordable birth control, which would in turn.
Okay, they're not the only people in America who provide affordable birth control. You can go get a pack of condoms down at the local CVS for $12.
The condom's great. People need medication too.
Yes, and it's true that most forms of birth control are also extraordinarily cheap on an annualized basis. Unless you have a severe problem, though most birth control is very cheap and readily available. And I'm not against people going and getting that from Planned Parenthood. As you may have noticed, I'm mostly against abortion. If you want to go to Planned Parenthood and get a contraceptive, go for it. I don't care. I do care when you start killing babies. This is a problem for me.
But what about in rape and incest situations?
Okay, so this is okay. So
Yeah, I
here's the
know
question.
it's different. Yes.
I mean, this is a long conversation, and I'm enjoying it actually, which is why I'm allowing you to stay. But, but the question of rape and incest, first of all, important to note, rape and incest are not only a vast minority of abortion cases, they're an extraordinarily low percentage of abortion cases. So if we can first stipulate that all the other abortions are bad, then we can talk about that other one. Can we do that? Are all the other abortions bad, or are those ones okay? And you're just using this as an excuse to make the other ones okay.
They're all okay.
Ah, good. Someone who's honest. So, who's the honest fellow? Who's okay? Yay, honest people. Good. I like the honesty. Okay, so all abortions are okay. So, oh, a sign that I can't read because it has lots of words on it. Okay, so. I have one question for you and one question only on abortion. Does the vagina, the vaginal canal, magically confer personhood? Answer, does the vagina magically confer personhood? Yeah, raised hands are okay. You, sir.
No, the first breath does.
The first breath confers personhood.
Yes.
Okay, so if the baby is in the womb and is exactly the same size and has not yet breathed, and you take a knife and you stab the baby in the head, a fully formed 9-month-old baby, it is not a human. The only thing that makes it a human is when it takes a breath. It has to independently breathe.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to stick to it, yeah, because I'm also pro-capital punishment, pro-selective suicide. So I'm going to stick with it.
Selective suicide?
Yeah.
I assume elective suicide.
I mean elective suicide.
Elective suicide, okay.
I'm not going to make someone commit suicide.
Right, okay, that's good, because that would be suicide, that'd be homicide. That, by the way, I'm for capital punishment too, because people who kill people should be killed, but babies who have not killed people should not. This is my basic position on abortion. So, let me just, but I'll get your answer because you're the one who asked the question. Are you willing to stipulate that all the other abortions are bad, just rape and incest bother you?
I mean, no. I believe a woman should have the right to an
Gotcha.
abortion.
So it's an excuse, right? So it's an excuse so that we can say that, so that we can take the marginal case and then say that the marginal case applies to all cases. Okay, that's again faulty thinking. But if you want me to answer specifically on rape and incest, here's my basic answer: rapists should be castrated or killed. You shouldn't kill babies. End of story.
But are they ever castrated and killed? Most rapists don't even get convicted.
I agree, and that's usually the left side of the aisle because the left side wants to let them out after 5 years in prison. I want them castrated or killed. I'm telling you what my belief is. My belief is not public policy at the moment. But I think, would you agree with me on that one? Can we at least get a little agreement to finish this particular parlay? Okay, should rapists be castrated or killed?
Well, yes.
Okay, good, yeah, you agree.
Hi Ben, I'm a huge fan. I watch your show every day.
Thank you.
She actually sent
Subscribe
me.
to Daily Wire for $8 a month.
You should do it. She actually set me up nicely for that. I'm pro-life just like you. You once said that you make an exception for the health of the mother when it's at
Life of the
risk.
mother, yes.
I'm curious how you justify that from a pro-life perspective.
Okay, so from a pro-life perspective, when you're judging between you're judging between the value of two lives. So let's give an example when the life of the mother would come into play. The vast majority of examples don't actually work. Like you almost never medically have to abort to save the life of the mother. But let's give an example. So there have been some cases where a woman goes in for a cancer screening, for a prenatal screening at like 20 weeks, for example, or 10 weeks or something. And now the woman finds out that she has cancer. And so the question is, can she have chemotherapy even if it kills the baby? So now you're talking about, does she have to die in order for the baby to be born? So you're not talking about both people are going to live. If both people are going to live, then it's not a relevant point. The question is, do you kill the mother to save the baby, or do you kill the baby to save the mother? And there, my argument is that you are allowed to kill the baby to save the mother, because the mother takes priority over the baby, but that's an almost unthinkable choice. But I can see the argument, I can certainly see the argument the other way, but I think that the mother's life trumps the baby's life if it comes down to it. But that is literally the only case in which I am pro-abortion.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I have one more question. for the sake of hypothetical, let's say that the Supreme Court ruled against gay marriage, they decided that case correctly, and so it's still left up to the states?
Yes.
You once said in the Rubin Report that if Leviticus 18:22 is your main argument against gay marriage, then that's not very good.
Yes, it's a bad argument.
How do you make a secular argument?
Okay, so the way that you make a secular argument against gay marriage on a state level. So first let me give my position on same-sex marriage, and then I'll explain to you the argument about same-sex marriage and why the state should not approve it from the state level. So my position on same-sex marriage, to be clear, is perfectly libertarian. I think the state should get completely out of the business of marriage. I think the state has no business telling me who I can and cannot marry, and that is on a religious basis. I have 2 marriage certificates. I have one from the state of California. I have one from my rabbi. The one from my rabbi is the one that matters. The one from the state of California is buried somewhere in my garage. I don't care about it because it doesn't mean anything to me, because as a religious person, I don't care what the state of California has to say. I care what my religion has to say about it. The one from the state of California didn't allow me to have sex with my wife. The one from the rabbi did. So it's much more important to me. So that's my perspective on whether the state should be part of marriage. My answer is no. Now, here's the argument as to why the state does not have an interest in promoting same-sex marriage. What is the state's interest in promoting same-sex marriage? That's the argument. So, the state does have an interest in promoting heterosexual marriage. The reason I say that they shouldn't get involved is because I think that every time the state gets involved in anything, it screws it up pretty badly. But they do have an argument in promoting the bearing and rearing of children within a married couple. And children are born in heterosexual couples naturally to the couple, and they're not born naturally to homosexual couples. Basic biology, again, rearing its ugly head. So, that being the case, the state does not have an interest in you falling in love with somebody. The state doesn't have an interest in you living with somebody. The state doesn't give a crap, okay? And the state shouldn't give a crap. Anthony Kennedy's argument in Obergefell is the stupidest argument in the world. He says, the state marriage certificate confers dignity. If you're looking to the state to confer you dignity, the same state that has the DMV figuring out how your life should run, you're looking in the wrong place for dignity. So my view is that if the state has any interest in marriage whatsoever, it's in the promulgation of marriage, and that is only in the increase of children, in creating and rearing children. And that doesn't exist in homosexual couples naturally. It does exist in heterosexual couples naturally. In fact, the vast majority of marriages, like a generation ago, 2 generations ago, were from people who were getting pregnant out of wedlock and then, oops, better get married. Right? And so the state promoted that because the idea was better they should be married than there should be single motherhood. So give them a few benefits. And it turns out single motherhood on a societal level is actually quite terrible. That's not a rip on single mothers. There are many wonderful single mothers who do a wonderful job. It is a rip on a society accepting single motherhood as comparable to marital status for children, because it's not the same thing.
Thank you very much.
Hi. My question's way off topic, but I really just want to...
I'm not sure we have a topic at this point, so go for it.
I really just want to know your reaction to thousands of high-rise architects, structural engineers, and physicists all signing a petition claiming planned demolition was used on 9/11, and that a proper investigation did not take place afterwards. I know it's considered like a lousy conspiracy theory.
It's a lousy conspiracy.
Yeah, okay, but still, it's... But why should we ignore professionals that have a hell of a resume like Lynn Margulis, who was awarded the National Medal of Science, and like there's...
I don't know what he or she, I don't know who Lynn Margulis is, so that's number one. So it's hard for me to refute the credentials of a person who I've never heard of, but let's assume they're the greatest architect in the history of humanity. Because conspiracy theories on a government level are almost always wrong. They assume a level of competence on the part of the government that simply does not exist. Okay, so start from the fact that the government sucks at everything, and then figure out how exactly they plan to demolish 2 of the biggest towers on planet Earth, as well as the Pentagon. They do it all simultaneously and somehow avoid the blame. They're amazing. Right? Now, the government sucks at everything, so that's the number 1 answer. Number 2 answer, there's no scientific evidence, as far as I can see, for planned demolition. I saw planes hit towers. I saw the tops of the towers collapse and collapse in on the rest of the towers.
No, I mean like Building 7, not the...
Yeah, Building 7 was damaged by the debris from the other towers. I mean, again,
it collapsed.
What's the point of... So then there's another question, which is what is the point of collapsing tower? Who benefited from collapsing Tower 7?
I mean, it was an excuse to go get oil, that's what...
Okay, so they had to collapse. So you're telling me they could collapse the Pentagon and the other 2, but they didn't. They collapsed Tower 7 because they want to get so like killing 3,000 Americans in the other 2 towers wasn't enough of an excuse to go get oil that we never got. By the way, they're really crappy at getting oil if that's the case, because all the oil went to the Iraqis. Like all the oil ended up getting pumped into Europe. How much profit did the United States make on the war in Iraq? Anybody? Yeah, we lost a few $1 trillion on war for Iraq. That was a really badly planned war for oil. If that was, but then you say, wow, but they're really bad with the war for oil, but they're really good at demolishing buildings and keeping it a massive secret. Again, everybody's giving everybody a little bit too much credit here. Okay, this is the fact is that conspiracy theories tend to crop up around people who are looking for a sense of order in the universe that just doesn't exist. And they're just looking for a plan, and so they must have been planned. It was planned. It was planned by Al Qaeda, and they took down a couple towers and killed 3,000 Americans, and then we kicked their ass.
Okay, but I'm not saying the government did it. But why can't we just acknowledge that planned demolition might have happened?
Because I have not seen any evidence of planned demolition. So if you want to show me evidence and I find it convincing...
So can I DM you on Twitter a documentary?
You can send me a documentary, and I'm happy to watch it if I'm ever in the midst of preparing for a colonoscopy and I have nothing better to do. I can't guarantee I'm going to spend 45 minutes watching a conspiracy theory documentary about the collapse of Tower 7.
Okay.
Hi there, my name is Alex, and I'm also a big fan. Just finished reading Brainwashed.